I want to talk for a second about this manufactured outrage and this absolute persecution complex that MAGA Republican Christians have in this country, in particular around this protest that happened at a church in St. Paul where the pastor works for ICE, where journalists Georgia Fort and Don Lemon were documenting what was happening, interviewing folks, and activists, including attorney and pastor Nakima Levy Armstrong, were protesting, exercising their right to protest in an entirely nonviolent and effectively disruptive way. And they have all been charged under two different laws. One that's like an anti-KKK law, and the other is the FACE Act, which is a law from the 1990s meant to preserve access to reproductive health clinics. Right, it's the far right in this country using abortion protection legislation and then using anti-KKK laws against Black Americans. Right, it's that cruelty, it's that twisting of the law to serve their ends and their reprehensible goals and not justice. And we could talk about the courage of the activists and the courage of Don Lemon and Georgia Fort standing up against this attack on the free press. Don was like, "Oh no, I'm not scared. I'm all in. I'm ready to defend myself and defend democracy and defend my right as a journalist to cover stories. I'm not going to be intimidated."
I have so many thoughts, and what this did was really open my eyes to a lot. So if you think that I was outspoken before this, just wait. Just wait. So I know that there are people who think like, oh, do this and, that I'm going to be locked up or whatever. I ain't worried about that. You heard the truth and the truth shall make you free. I ain't even worried about that. Like not. Don't even think about it. So whatever happens, I always think that something good is always going to happen. And something usually good always happens if you have that mindset.
That's the kind of energy we all need to bring to the party right now. But I more want to focus on something that really confuses me as an ex-Calvinist, as somebody who was a proud member of the Reformed tradition for decades of my life. This church in St. Paul is a church plant of desiring God. That's John Piper's ministry. John Piper. So, maybe we shouldn't be too surprised. We shouldn't be too surprised that a pastor there is working for ICE. The Reformed tradition in the U.S. has just been like right down that MAGA pipeline. As somebody who is a member of the Presbyterian Church in America, if you know, you know, I have lost multiple friends from my church, including elders' wives, straight down the QAnon pipeline, straight to the cult of MAGA, right? It's been really sad and really discouraging for me. But I can't help, as an ex 5-point tulip Calvinist, I can't help but be really weirded out by how all of my former friends in the Reformed tradition are clutching their pearls and being like, oh my gosh, we're being persecuted. Like how scary it is for them to have Black Americans come into a church and just try to hold people accountable for the ways that they're behaving in an unchristian-like manner, like the sacrificial love of Jesus is not being demonstrated in that church and not being lived out by the pastor of that church. And they're just coming in and being like, hey guys, Jesus probably isn't down with us. Shame on you. And we know that Donald Trump and Stephen Miller, they don't have any sincere religious conviction whatsoever. And we know that they are using this guise of religion to try and chill dissent, to try and make people afraid of protesting, afraid of exercising their protected rights. And when I first saw news of this protest break, because journalists Georgia Fort and Don Lemon were covering it, my first thought was oh, this is fucking sick. This is exactly what Jesus would have done. Any of us from the Reformed tradition who pride ourselves not only on our theology but our extensive knowledge of Scripture should have been immediately like, oh, this is giving Jesus cleanses the temple. This is giving Matthew 21. That's fucking sick. I'll just read, of course it's going to be the NRSV, but I'm just going to read this to you. Then Jesus entered the temple and drove out all who were selling and buying in the temple, and he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seat of those who sold doves. He said to them, "It is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a den of robbers." I mean, calling out a pastor who is profiting, who is lining his own pockets of an ethnic cleansing largely against Christians, Seems like a pretty biblical thing to do, to come and hold him and his congregation to account. But of course, white MAGA Christians don't know what the fuck persecution looks like or feels like. So when they feel discomfort, when they're asked to examine whether their actions and their beliefs match the teachings of Jesus, and they feel discomfort, they believe that that's persecution. Pretty classic white fragility. Pretty classic right to comfort. And again, as an ex-Presbyterian PCA and an ex-Calvinist, I can't help but look at these Reformed churches clutching their pearls. I can't help but look at the posts from my old church friends. Yeah, I'm still in communication with some of them. I still am friends with some of them on Facebook, and see them freaking out over this protest in St. Paul, manufacturing their oppression, being like, our right to worship is threatened. This is so scary for all of us. Oh, is your church led by a slave catcher? Is your pastor a Gestapo agent too? Is that why you're worried? And so when I look at conservative Christians, particularly from the Reformed tradition, who are up in arms over this protest in St. Paul, I can't help but be like, really? Really? I get that you don't let your kids celebrate Halloween because you think that it's demonic, right? But you do celebrate Reformation Day, which is also on October 31st, because you're from the Reformed tradition, as in the Protestant Reformation, as in you're a Protestant protest. Please help me square up how you are outraged over this nonviolent protest in St. Paul with how you venerate Martin Luther's act of nailing his 95 Theses to the church door in Wittenberg. Please square with me how it is that you are freaking the fuck out over this non-violent protest in St. Paul, calling out the hypocrisy of a church, and yet you read to your children about Jesus overturning the tables of the money changers and dove sellers. Explain to me how you think that you were being persecuted for what happened in St. Paul, where Christians were calling other Christians to task. But we all celebrate the sacrifices of our spiritual forefathers. What do you think John Calvin, John Knox, and Martin Luther were doing? Why is it that you're like so down with the German Peasants' War and the 30 Years' War, but you're flipping the fuck out over a nonviolent protest in St. Paul? And I guess I want to add this little bit here at the end. We know that this actually doesn't have anything to do with religion at all. We actually know that Jesus isn't like anywhere in this process for MAGA Christians, and definitely not for the regime. I heard today that Walter Masterson and a number of other activists are being investigated and may potentially be charged under the FACE Act, just like Don Lemon and Nikema Levy-Armstrong and Georgia Fort and others, because they were at a town hall at a synagogue, and they dared to exercise their right in a public forum. A town hall is a public forum where Democrat Tom Suozzi was speaking. They challenged him because he voted to fund ICE, and the regime is now trying to use this same FACE Act. And they are saying that because it was inside a synagogue, that they're going to charge them just like they charged the church protesters, but it's a town hall. And so Walter was explaining that the concern here is that Republicans and corporate establishment Democrats are going to try and have all of their town halls at churches and synagogues so that you can't exercise your rights, so that they can try and trump up charges against you. Just be aware, if you dare to speak out anywhere that's a church right now, they're going to try and come for you. They are desperately trying to chill dissent.
Trump administration announced that they're going to be investigating me and my friends. And they're going to try and indict me under the FACE Act, the same act that they just indicted Don Lemon under. However, they don't really have a case, but I don't think that's going to stop them from charging me and arresting me. That's just my opinion. So here's a little bit on what happened. Last Tuesday, January 27th, my friends and I went into Democrat Congressman Tom Suozzi's political town hall. We RSVP'd using our names, went in through the front door, went through metal detectors. He started speaking. We interrupted him, and we were thrown out. I was thrown out while trying to read the names of the 9 people that died in ICE custody just in the month of January. The police were called. They came to the scene, said, well, nothing has happened. Everyone's been nonviolent. We really appreciate if you leave the premises, keep going. And we said, yep, okay, great. See you later. Have a good one. And we left. This was a protest of Democrat Tom Suozzi funding ICE. This is a political town hall. People were invited. So right now, my friends and I are lawyered up. I'm not going to stop fighting, and you shouldn't stop fighting either. This is what they're trying to do. They want to go after protesters, and the second they find the smallest thing, they're going to use it. This is not how democracy works. This is not how democracy should work.
It's a ridiculous perversion of this law because a town hall is not a religious service, and they were in no way violating the FACE Act. It's not going to hold up in court. But the goal of this regime is not to follow the law. They're hell-bent on trampling the law, right? The goal for them is to intimidate you. The goal is to subvert and pervert and twist the law in order to enact violence and to enact vengeance and to punish their political enemies. This is all about chilling dissent. This is all about trying to destroy your life because you are daring to speak up on behalf of democracy. And what we're seeing is this huge backlash effect. We're seeing activists and journalists be like, okay, this is just emboldening me. This repression is intolerable. I will not bend to it. I will not bow to it. I'm going to redouble my efforts. This has just helped galvanize an awful lot of people. I know the regime is trying to make us all scared. I know that MAGA Christians are really scared of losing their power, and so they're going to continue to lean into their persecution complex, even though they have all of the power. I know the regime is increasingly desperate. Please understand, going after nonviolent protesters, going after journalists, going after people at town halls, and trying to use the FACE Act to do it, huge sign of desperation. Don't let it chill your dissent. Don't let it freak you out. Don't let it scare you into complying with the regime.